The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor.
Greetings from the United Kingdom.
Josh Shigala from Voltoro. Still muted.
Oh, good day. I don't know. It's like going for a good day from Deutschland. I don't know.
That doesn't make any sense.
No.
Ben Ark from BTC IoT.
Baradana Star from the Ununited Kingdom.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network, reminding you to give us a thumbs up right now. The sooner, the better. Moving on to issue one. Issue one, El Salvador. Enhance. El Salvador achieved independence from Spain in 1821 and from the Central American Federation in 1839. A 12-year civil war, which cost about 75,000 lives, was brought to a close in 1992 when the government and leftist rebels signed a treaty that provided for military and political reforms. El Salvador, according to the CIA World Factbook, is beset by one of the world's highest homicide rates and pervasive criminal gangs. Nayib Bukele.
Nayib Bukele.
Oh, president of El Salvador, a populist, has been criticized for governing in an authoritarian manner. In particular, he was denounced for sending soldiers into the legislative assembly to encourage the passage of a bill and allegedly to overthrow the legislative assembly of El Salvador. This action, his handling of endemic violence in El Salvador, and his strict response to the COVID-19 pandemic have led some academics to describe him as an autocrat or as an authoritarian. Transparency International cited El Salvador and Colombia as examples of an explosion of irregularities and corruption cases related to the handling of the pandemic in Latin America. 20 government institutions of the Bukele administration were under investigation by the Attorney General's office until, in May 2021, Bukele led a parliamentary move to fire the Attorney General and multiple Supreme Court judges of El Salvador, which has been characterized as a self-coup and has sparked fears of democratic backsliding and a power grab. Nayib Bukele.
Nayib Bukele.
Meanwhile, back to Bitcoin, El Salvador becomes the first country to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender after passing a law, which sounds like it would be very difficult to pass in El Salvador. Lawmakers in the Central American country's Congress voted by a supermajority in favor of the new Bitcoin law. Bitcoin will officially be legal tender, accepted in all shops. The government has even described a service where perhaps you could cash out your Bitcoins or Satoshis for dollars. The current currency of El Salvador is the US dollar. They are now adding Bitcoin as an additional option of legal tender. They also want to use electricity generated from volcanoes to mine Bitcoin. But that's neither here nor there. Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor. El Salvador becomes the first country to accept Bitcoin as legal tender. Is this good for Bitcoin? Is this good for El Salvador?
Well, I was really pumped until you read out the wiki notes, and now I'm like, oh, so he's you know, obviously he sounds like he's pushed it through, you know, nudged it through a bit, but at the end of the day, you know, he you know, there may be all of the hoo-ha around about the guy himself and about the coup and stuff, but the fact is that, you know, it's a perfect kind of almost test bed with 70% not of the inhabitants not being integrated into financial services. It's kind of a really good example, or not example, a test run of how a country could integrate Bitcoin. The fact is that there's no cap gains. Is they've said in the in the articles of law. I think they also said that you must accept Bitcoin unless you don't have the like the technology to do so. So I suppose it could be gamed, because people could say, I don't have a computer to accept it, even if they did, or something like that. I don't know if they were kind of really that much against Bitcoin. But ultimately, I think the fact that it's now foreign, it's now considered foreign exchange. The fact that there's no capital gains, that hopefully that happens in the rest of the world as well, and it's not considered as like goods. It's considered forex, and therefore there's no cap gains on it. I think that's a kind of a good way of going around it, because the idea of Bitcoin was a currency initially, and this is following that kind of the path of Bitcoin as a currency. I think it's also cool about doing the volcano. So they've obviously cottoned on to the fact that the volcano, there's a lot of talk about Bitcoin not being environmentally friendly. So having volcanoes produce mining electricity, or electricity for mining, I think is good. But yeah, I think it sounds cool. I like the fact Jack Mallers obviously out there with Strike, trying to set up the infrastructure. And that was kind of really, really cool to read, right? It's not like El Salvador wants to set up. It doesn't have its own currency. It's using the US dollar, and it's going to set up a new currency. And it's not like JP Morgan setting it up. It's Jack Mallers and Strike. I think that's the kind of cool takeaway. Is that the technology now supersedes the existing infrastructure that everyone's grown to love, because everyone loves banking in the traditional financial institution. So yeah, maybe hopefully it goes well, because this could really pave the way for a rollout for the rest of the world. But we'll see.
We forgot to mention in the intro that Jack Mallers of Strike, friend of the show, was largely behind the initiative, giving an incredible announcement of it at the Bitcoin 2021 conference. Congratulations, Jack. A positive thing, regardless of anything critical we might say of El Salvador. Josh Shigala, your thoughts and your chance to say something critical about El Salvador. But you're muted today.
Somehow I'm just forgetting the mute button today. Now it's my turn to forget the mute button. No, look, no taxes on BTC. That's pretty good. Tax hell shit for any sort of shit coins and foreign income. So that's kind of shitty, because what's with the taxes? It's just one of the most dangerous places in the world. So that's kind of a no-go. Residency for 3 Bitcoin. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit steep. It's a bit steep. Bunch of guys with power drills ready to extract your seeds upon arrival. That's always a bit dangerous. Let's have a look at Paraguay. A lovely beach. But for that, you get no tax on Bitcoin, shit coins, or foreign income. It's pretty cool. Your residency for 0.1737 BTC. I don't know where they got that number from. That's a pretty fun number, though. It's easy to get. Driver's license are included, and low crime and high quality of life. So, you make the choice. What do you want? Paraguay. But look, it's funny because a lot of people got into Bitcoin early. The early Bitcoiners were very ethically minded, all about the moral reason for holding it. A lot of it was technical as well. A lot of people were very technical and obsessed with the technology. But since you can really see the moon boys and girls coming in and they just want moon, whatever. So like, full on fierce dictator takes it. Yeah, moon. Oh, Elon's pumping it, moon. Elon's hating it. Kill him. Like, it's a total, like, just all morals get thrown out the window. And this is unfortunate. It's unfortunate. But the fact of the matter is, Bitcoin is the honey badger, it doesn't give a shit what you are. I don't think countries need to take Bitcoin. Like anyone in that country could take Bitcoin. The fact is that they make it tax-free and they sort of put a gun to your head saying you have to take this if you can. Weird thing. But that also doesn't sit right with me. Well, you don't have to take anything. I mean, trade should be a voluntary action between two people, and you have a medium of exchange that sits in the middle. Look, I'm as happy as the next guy that there's news of more adoption, but I don't think we need to, go screaming through the streets saying this is the best thing ever, because, quite frankly, this guy sounds like a douche.
I think Josh makes a good point that Bitcoin itself doesn't care. Bitcoin didn't change when this got notified. Bitcoin didn't change anything about the things it did. It just kept being Bitcoin. And that, yes, much like the Wizard of Oz, they already had the power to do this. They were already doing this. It's good to have some tax breaks and some encouragement. But I agree with Josh. It's important to see that gun pointed at people, and to see that even if we're on the other side of that gun, where it's like, accept Bitcoin, which is something we like, it's still not good to be using that gun. And to follow up on what Dan said, volcano power is awesome, but it's also exactly what a James Bond villain who had taken over a country would say. Ben Ark, your thoughts on El Salvador?
Well, yeah, a few days later, Trump tweeted out that Bitcoin is an attack on the US dollar, which it's true. The US dollar's hegemony and power, which it wields in South America, has been disastrous, caused a lot of pain and suffering, and people have been trying to get past sanctions and US control for quite a while. I was surprised that an mostly anti-democratic darling of US neoliberal types was the one to adopt it, because he always had a good relationship with Trump and that clan. He's been the one to push it in El Salvador. Maybe Jack Mallers is an incredibly good salesperson. I'm quite excited about it. I mean, a lot of the stuff I build has been off the back of real world use of Bitcoin in a bar or Bitcoin in a cafe, and it helps inform your design decisions and what you're going to make and how you're going to make it, rather than just all of us building tools for this science fictional, maybe it might be used one day in the real world scenario. It's really nice to have have the software and hardware used out in the wild, so you get that real world use case. And there's going to be plenty of that, and El Salvador itself is going to attract a lot of fintech companies, because they'll now have favorable infrastructure laws for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. I know that Strike are going to put one of their headquarters there. Bukele himself, like, he's a populist leader, but he does have popular vote. I think it's 90%. And since 2018, he's managed to halve the murder rate in El Salvador. And there's always a problem with dictators. Like, if you get a good dictator, then yes, they can make a lot of impactful decisions, and they might be for what looks like the better of the country. But as they do that democratic backsliding, you can find yourself in a very sticky position a little bit later on down the road when they go nuts, take too much cocaine, and start careering around the landscape with a machine gun, which has happened in some countries around the world. So hopefully that won't happen. Hopefully it will just attract a lot of investment and people using Bitcoin in the real world, and it will also erode the US dollar's power over South America, and all of other South American countries will follow suit. As Josh said, Paraguay seems to be very receptive to Bitcoin. I think they've all got the one common enemy in South America, and that is the US dollar. So dethrone it and attack it.
Ben, you're supposed to say spoiler alert before you ruin the ending of the movie Scarface. And I agree with Ben. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, at least for now. This is a positive development for Bitcoin, regardless of the country that it may be. I do hope that it's a larger and more developed country next time. Just like to ask everyone to give it a thumbs up. We've got about 42 people watching now, and 11 people have hit the thumbs up button. So if we can get that button up, we can get more viewers and we can get more chat, and everything will just start happening. Moving on to the exit question. And of course, this has to do with the International Monetary Fund. Previously, El Salvador had been taking loans from the IMF. Now that everyone has suddenly declared them a Bitcoin nation, assuming they're now going to hold part of their treasury in Bitcoin, maybe even see some gains like Tesla saw. Therefore, Max Kaiser, according to the Twitter internet, someone told me, has come up with the idea to buy El Salvador out of their $1 billion loan from the IMF. Obviously, they're not looking for me for the funding, but somewhere out there, I guess there's a Bitcoin or an Ethereum or a person out there that wants to buy them out of their loan. Dan, Eve, what do you think about this idea of Bitcoin or some kind of collection of coins buying off El Salvador's $1 billion IMF loan?
Well, it definitely turn heads, that's for sure. But I think that I may raise the point about sanctions, but then a crypto player mentioned, the impact of sanctions on the country just for accepting Bitcoin would probably be a bit heavy-handed. So it's kind of a good thing that it would happen under the radar. It's kind of like how Bitcoin started out, which was that not many people believed in it versus the existing financial system. They and if it wasn't for coming from the ground up from individuals slowly turning and understanding Bitcoin, learning about it, and then implementing and using it in their own day-to-day lives, it wouldn't be this multi-headed ninja snake that you can't cut the head off because it's you whack-a-mole, you can't do it. So with El Salvador leading the way, any sanctions would be too heavy-handed, and therefore it will be allowed to continue, and it will become a global experiment, I think. So I think, the IMF will be certainly looking very closely at El Salvador and how Bitcoin's being rolled out there, and the impact to not just obviously they'll be looking more to the impact of the government, which will probably be very much enriched, and that's what will make the dollar symbols roll in their eyes, rather than seeing the impact on the people and the positive impacts on the people, and that bringing more of those 70% out of the financial system online.
What a terrible surprise when the country learns how many Bitcoins can be carried out within a single suitcase. Josh Shigala, should we buy El Salvador out of their IMF loan?
Hell no. What? Why would you? The IMF printed money out of nowhere, gave it to El Salvador. If they're stupid enough to accept that crap, then why you're really going to trade in this rare asset for that's like similar things happen in Greece, where the European Central Bank said, "Oh, yeah, we'll help you out, Greece. We'll help you out. All you have to do is give us that Acropolis and that island and this, that." And then they literally go back, print out fake crap, or just type it in, and then expect you to hand over real assets. I mean, this is the same sort of thing. Why would you hand over real rare assets like Bitcoin so you can bail out some idiot country? I mean, not country. The people are obviously wonderful, but I always get myself in trouble. They're going to take that snippet and go, "Look at him. What a racist." No, look, wonderful people of El Salvador.
Check out WCN Clips on Google at WCN Clips for more exciting clips.
Josh insulting every single country on the planet one by one.
Oh, man, I've done it. No, look, I mean, it's fantastic that you're accepting BTC and all, but you know what? You just say we're not gonna pay back your nonsense fake money. That's what they do. Yeah, they'll come under sanction, and they'll get all sorts of defaults and troubles. But if they're accepting Bitcoin, then that doesn't matter anymore. This is the paradigm shift that will happen. Similar things happening, around the world. We recently talked to someone, in I don't know if I'm allowed to say. But another country is looking at the similar thing to get away from a lot of debt brought in by China. So we're seeing the next step. The first step in 2017 was the whole normie influx, the normal people getting in. And how cool is that? It's the first currency where the bottom up first came in, and then this pump has been all the institutions coming in, and the next pump will be the countries. El Salvador is just a bit early.
I want to follow Josh on this one because I also don't think that we should pay off the loan. Not really for the Salvadorian people, which I'm sure are great, but just for this guy again. Oh, it's not working.
Nayib Bukele.
For Nayib Bukele, it seemed like it would be $1 billion gift to a powerful dictator. This is another one of these, just like the people wanting to visit El Salvador, the people wanting to move there, these overexcited, let's call them mooners, the mooner Bitcoiners, these new people. They just love new things. They love new flashy things like the cat with the laser, and they're just excited. And I like that. And I like the excitement. And I don't want to be down on it. We just have to watch out when the laser goes dictator, and we're giving $1 billion. Yeah.
You calling Adam Backer, Blockstreamer, Mooner, because
I don't know. He likes
Mooning.
Liquid too.
Yeah, well, I thought that was very interesting that they're planning on setting up a headquarters in El Salvador, because obviously you have Bitcoin, you have Lightning Network and all the infrastructure which that built, and other bits, of course, and things like it, and all the infrastructure that comes with. But then inevitably, you're going to run into the issue of the fact that Bitcoin isn't stable. So what do you do? Well, you need a stable fiat currency. So how are you going to get your stable fiat currency? You get Blockstream to make you a stable fiat currency. And that's why they are moving there. So I'm really looking forward to that happening, because I've mentioned that a few times, and I think it would be absolutely fantastic, and to have a much more honest soft currency, and less corruptible soft currency, maybe federated geographically between regions and democratically controlled. That I'm interested to see that, or some sort of stable coin solution, because they will need that. Like, yes, they can use Bitcoin instead of the dollar, but they will run into lots of issues when Bitcoin halves in price, doubles in price, halves in price.
They already started referring it to in the article. They're like, items will have to be priced in Bitcoin. And I was like, oh my God, you're gonna have to erase that 12 times a day.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is where you're going to have, the El Salvadoran dollar, but it's going to be a sidechain, a stable coin, a token built on Bitcoin using all of the Bitcoin's security functions, but you're going to have all those soft currency functions as well. And it's going to
now I'm having two ideas in my brain at the same time. If it's
that's why they're moving
coin, but it's built on Bitcoin, how can I like it, Ben? It's hurting my maximalism.
Well, I mean, it's just basically, liquid, isn't it? A liquid token, which you can control the throughput of, print more, remove some. Whatever.
The problem with that scenario that I see is it's a slippery slope, because blockchain tokens are different than, let's say, I don't know, WeChat tokens, in that when you start programming them, that's when it starts to get sketchy. So the government just starts turning them off when it's centralized and on too much control over their side.
This is the point: is you don't let it centralized. That's why you have it federal. That's why liquid tokens are, exchanges use them all the time, is because it's federated in a way which makes it decentralized enough for what you're using it for. Like, yes, put all of your savings in Bitcoin, but you can use this stable thing, and it's safe to use for day-to-day transactions and your daily finances. It's probably it's a much better version of a stable currency than a dollar.
I think the infrastructure of El Salvador is that these stable coins, they fit into suitcase technology as well. They fit into pockets. They fit into notebooks. They fit into cat gifts. Like, everyone said that Sheep Marketplace was a great place and they had fantastic customer service right up until the weekend when they exit scammed.
Well, potentially with a stable coin fiat, you could citizens could demand that the public, authorities, which are or public sector services, have to give up their read keys, so you can read exactly where funds are going and you can chart where funds are going. That's something which they could hold their government to account to, because the technology exists. It's just a much better version of, think about the dollar. I mean, that's backed by the violence of the US imperialism, or any other currency, any other fiat currency. It's just a much better version of that, which doesn't rely on violence. It relies on clever, decentralized federated network.
Of course, if we were using a centralized stablecoin where the government controlled it, maybe they could turn off the coins if they were stolen, or they could turn them off if they were used by rebels. And pretty soon you can't even buy a Big Mac.
Misanthrope.
All right. So we didn't get an answer from Ben. Are you going to buy back their loan? I don't think you're going
Oh, no, I'm not going to buy it. That's an absolutely awful idea. You give it towards World Aid, I don't know, some charity for giving.
I also think that we should put a middleman in there. Maybe we can collect the $1 billion before we give it to them, and then we could accidentally lose the $1 billion. I want to put that in as an option. Like, that's a great plan. We could make more money by making a musical that fails than making a musical that succeeds.
No, you could do it the same as the CIA did it with the petroleum pipeline. You just sort of pay it back to the IMF, but take it just before they get it and say, yeah, we paid you. You dropped the debt already.
That's the things with bookies, is even after they break your legs, you still have to pay. All right, moving on to issue 2. Bitcoin Mining Council debuts as backlash increases. I'm sorry, that was energy backlash. I thought this article was going to be about a backlash against a centralized institution attempting to control and monitor Bitcoin mining, pretty much everyone's worst nightmare. But instead, it's a laudatory article celebrating Michael Saylor from MicroStrategies, who's created the Bitcoin Mining Council, which is sure to solve all problems with Bitcoin and energy use. As we know, Senator Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts called Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies an environmental disaster, seeing it only in the short term and only using the multiplication, not referencing the Galaxy Digital report where it said that gold market uses twice as much, the banking market uses twice as much, and always on devices such as PlayStations and other devices use 7 times as much energy as Bitcoin. That's 7 times whatever country they recently referred it to. So 7 Argentinas or 7 Irelands. Meanwhile, the Bitcoin Mining Council is here to solve all of the problems. Josh Sigala, the new people are here. They've created a centralized institution. Will they solve all of the problems of Bitcoin mining?
Of course they won't. No, they will. They won't. I don't know. They'll do their best. Great. I love how these peeps come out of the woodwork. It's probably Michael Saylor trying to protect his investment. The thing is, a lot of this is about price. A lot of this fear is about you got to keep the price up. And really, technologically, we got to get more people using things like the Lightning Network. That's what you do. That's what you do, because no one really cares at the end of the day about the other stuff, apart from news headlines. They care, but people don't. They want to get money A to B. They want to protect their wealth. They want to protect their family, and yeah, Lightning Network, that needs adoption. We should have more focus on, hey, let's get Lightning Network adoption.
Maybe we can get Michael Saylor to try out the Lightning Network, give it a try. And as the article says, most of this is about Elon Musk. Elon Musk is not involved in the Bitcoin Mining Council, despite saying it was a good idea. And Elon Musk, of course, warned everyone after Tesla accepted Bitcoin, then stopped accepting Bitcoin a few weeks later, as if something had changed. If only Elon had warned us about little green men from Mars mining Bitcoin, perhaps we would have built an intergalactic firewall to protect ourselves. Instead, we've built a mining council to protect Bitcoin mining from Elon Musk. We'll see if it has any effect. Josh, did you have more on that?
Yeah, I mean, I find it really fascinating. The more I thought about the whole Elon thing, his cars take all this electricity. When I plug the supercharger into my car, it's like the whole thing behind, because they've got like these generators. I don't know if they're generators or if they're whatever.
You can't speak out about the environmental issues of Tesla. They'll cut off your internet connection. Ben Ark, your thoughts on Bitcoin mining council?
Yeah, these electric cars, I agree with Josh. They're not the answer. Liquid hydrogen or something like liquid hydrogen is probably the answer. Liquid hydrogen cars, far more efficient and works like regular normal petrol. You can fill your car up as quick, and as long as you can just capture the energy in a clean way using renewables, it's much greener than mining this lithium out of the ground and building all these batteries. I don't know why Elon Musk gets this pass card, because he's sending people into space, sending tourists into space, rich people who've literally run out of things to do with their extreme wealth. The only thing they can now do is be a tourist in space, which, by the way, has an absolutely gigantic carbon footprint. Okay, you're what's the word? You're expanding on space exploration. You're developing space exploration, but at that same time, the reason you get so many government subsidies is that same technology can be used for rockets in the military. He's whatever. Elon Musk's a dickhead. I don't mind this mining council thing. I don't really see what the fuss is about. They're not. They can have a council. They can be held to account. We can lobby miners. They're real world endpoints. They're not cypherpunks. They're business. No one knows any. None of us know any miners. We have very little to do with the mining community. They're just contractors. They're just thugs we hire to secure the network. And if they can be lobbied to move towards more renewables by a gazillionaire like Michael Saylor, then whatever, it's fine. There's not much damage they can actually do to the network, because the users hold them to account on the software which they want to use to validate the transactions. So it's not nothing to be worried about as much as Bitcoiners are worrying about it. I think with with previously, when we had closed door meetings with all the business leaders and the miners with the 2x agreement thing, that was kind of a different time, and it very much felt like they could have an impact on Bitcoin. But I don't think a bunch of miners can, being lobbied to be more green, which they'll probably try and wiggle out of, because it's not doesn't make any financial sense to them currently. But I've said before on the show, Bitcoin does have a high carbon footprint. And as Josh said, absolutely perfectly, use Lightning Network. It's thousands, potentially millions of times more efficient than Bitcoin. Don't use this amazing technology for doing your silly little transactions. Use it for your big, important transactions, and then use, Lightning Network for the other stuff. And until we get renewables, I'd like to see more offsetting platforms available for people who are interested in, so say Tesla, for example, if they've got an issue with the carbon footprint of a Bitcoin transaction, an on-chain Bitcoin transaction, because obviously these Teslas are quite expensive, then for a little bit extra, they could offset that carbon footprint for like a decade. And it's not that much more, talking maybe $100, couple of $100. So, and that's nothing on top of the price of a Tesla. Hopefully more offsetting options, more people using Lightning Network, and carry on Michael Saylor, lobby those dirty, horrible, thuggish miners.
We can trust the businessmen and the gang of thugs. They won't form a cartel. Everything will be fine. Dan Eve, your thoughts on the Bitcoin mining council?
I do. I think overall, I'm actually quite positive about it, because I think Ben pointed out that these are businesses, real world businesses, that can be lobbied themselves and probably have shareholders and stuff. And so the idea that the collusion is going to be there, and it's going to bring, it kind of does bring a bit of centralization in terms of thoughts, maybe, because you've got the centralized, the primary miners all in a centralized way discussing ideas, and there may kind of be back under the table stuff happening, but I don't think it's it's that destructive. And if anything, all the that they know that their businesses will be in jeopardy if they want, if the environmental attack happens as it's and continues to happen, then they'll just produce more studies and analysis and kind of, you know, virtue signal slash actually show how much of the energy is coming from more green, you know, green areas and renewables. And I think also that, like, I don't know, the power of, like, the power production of say, for example, if you have if you're comparing it to cars, as often they do, I think in that article they did, like the output of cars, for example. Well, cars produce, you know, X amount of CO2, but each individual car is, you know, it's not one engine that does thousands of cars. Like you have a factory that does, you know, thousands of kilowatts of electric, or whatever, megawatts of electricity, hundreds, billions, trillions. So the efficiencies of the scale of producing power are different, you know, and the output of the actual the output of emissions are different when you're, you know, considering, say, just a bunch of cars to a factory that produces it and how it processes the output. But you could jump on the bandwagon and say, well, why not allow Bitcoin mining, but to if it's from non-renewables, say if you're a country, to charge an additional tax. So you're still kind of, you're open to it, but it's the carbon credits thing, right? If you're allowing Bill Gates to fly on a private jet everywhere, but just pay money to plant some trees, like he's still pumping out a shitload of, like, what's it, environmentally bad materials into the atmosphere and exhaust fumes, and like Tesla is as well, by taking people to space for fun. But I think the funny thing about, say, like, Elizabeth Warren sort of, you know, bringing it up, she's a multimillionaire. Well, anything that a multimillionaire does is usually way in excess of a normal human being in terms of, you know, you don't just have a steak that's a cow that's like with loads of other cows. You have a cow in its own field, like that's been, you know, I was going to say massaged I'm not going to go down that route, but, you know, they take a lot of care over this additional cow, this one cow. You go to a restaurant, you're sat miles apart from people instead of, you have bigger amounts of land. If you're gonna, you know, attack things about economies, like don't have kids, don't have more than one car, watering a lawn, spare room in the house, more than one. I wrote a list, I've been prepared. And only because someone said, like, you watered your lawn. And I was like, yeah, but I only have one car in the household. And they were like, and I was like, yeah, but like, what? You know, there's all these other reasons. What about having more than one type of item of clothes? Have one pair of shoes, because anything more is wasteful. So don't give me that crap about being wasteful, because you're being wasteful by having more than one pair of shoes, more than one type of accessory, throwing away food, only flushing the toilet after a dump. Why not? It wastes a load of, if you're not going to have a massive stench around, why not just save only to a flush after a dump? Otherwise you're just wasting electricity. You might as well be mining Bitcoin. What about just not using everything until it's been thrown out? We live in a throwaway culture, you know, there's plenty of that sort of stuff going around. But yeah, you can, there's to the nth degree, you can talk about waste and efficiency and the usages of whatever. But, you know, going back to the console argument that it uses, you know, Bitcoin mining uses the same amount of consoles in a year, for example. Go and tell a load of, like, all the people that play consoles that their entertainment, that their thing that they like and believe in is going to be taken away because it's excessive. You don't need it. Like, it's because, you know, finance is a need. Like, game consoles aren't a need. Let's be honest. It's entertainment. And it's a luxury to life. So you could go to the nth degree, cutting people's liberties down and saying what they should and shouldn't do. But ultimately, yeah, don't flush unless you've had a dump.
First, they'll come for your game consoles, then they'll come for your guns. And also, what Dan said there is that we've moved it out of the environment into another environment. Yes, we've moved it out of the environment into another environment. All right, moving on. Did you know the World Crypto Network has its own Clips channel at WCN Clips on YouTube and Google and all the places that you search for videos? Subscribe to WCN Clips today and get the shows in shorter format. Your chance to be one of the first 50 subscribers. Google WCN Clips today. Issue 3, U.S. inflation rate hits biggest since 2008, outlining the case for Bitcoin.
There is an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve.
The Consumer Price Index, a measure of the price of consumer goods and services, has increased by an annual rate of 5% last month, hitting its highest mark since August of 2008, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. As money printing,
There is an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve.
And federal economic stimulus measures continue in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, many fear that inflation could lead to out-of-control prices and additional problems for the U.S. government and the economy. Ben Ark, is inflation on the way? Should we be afraid? Or is this again good for Bitcoin?
No, you should be worried. No, it's the US can inflate a lot more. I mean, they really want to increase their deficit and then just not pay it back. That's the best way to handle the inflation. But if they don't want to do that, then they can just increase interest rates, and then banks will stop lending, and there'll be less money printed, and then inflation will decrease. So this is these governments can trying to control their fiat currencies. It's a balancing act between inflation and interest rate, and they're fairly efficient at it. They're not as good as they could be at it. Soft currencies have a lot of useful functions. Like you can just make more of it, for example, but more often than not, that gets corrupted, and then it can be applied poorly. And ultimately, if you've got some crazy dictator, then a sovereign currency producer can have runaway and hyperinflation. But I wouldn't worry for the US dollar. I would worry for maybe the euro, because you've got a whole bunch of countries who aren't sovereign currency producers, so they can't just create or as much money as they need to get themselves out of an economic crisis. They're reliant upon doing it through the euro, which is what we saw in Cyprus and all the problems they had, for example. So no, you don't need to be worried. And that, as a bunch of Bitcoiners sat waiting for hyperinflation to take hold, so hyper-Bitcoinization will happen, I think is mostly a waste of effort. We should just build better money infrastructure and make a money which works better and more natively on the internet, and then people will just use it. But yeah, I wouldn't expect the dollar to have hyperinflation anytime soon, unless they get a complete lunatic in power and they re-elect Trump maybe, and I don't know, they dissolve the Senate and whatever else you'd need to do in order to make an unstable country.
Oh, but doing it your way sounds like too much work. I'd rather just wait for the other system to fail and then assume that it would, because then I don't have to do anything, right? Dan Eve is gone. Let's go to Josh Shigala. Your thoughts on inflation?
The thing is, yes, in a vacuum, Ben is correct. You can just sort of stop, you can lift interest rates, and that means the dollar gains value as people start to pay off their loans and want to buy it off the free market and remove, and that causes more demand. The thing that the American dollar had for a long time is that other places would start to use the US dollars, especially South America, as we can see, as we talked about earlier. And this use case is kind of interesting, where you start to spread a fiat currency that is your sovereign currency, but you start to spread it to countries that just have terrible.
Looks like Dan Eve is back. Josh Shigala is frozen, or perhaps I'm frozen. Dan, your thoughts on inflation and Bitcoin?
Oh, inflation, eh? Inflation. If I was to give you an example, see, the problem is, whilst everyone's raving about the volatility of Bitcoin, they kind of, because it just swings wildly. And fair enough, it does, but lots of things swing. But I'm not going to go down that route. Swinging is fine if you're for a couple that just want to open up avenues. But anyway, there are also other things to worry about, like inflation in general. Like a gallon of milk. Here, I'll give you two examples, two drinking examples. So 36 cents in 1913. In 2013, $3.53. and a cup of coffee 1970 25 cents, 2021 2.99. So that's the cost of having an infinite amount of money in your reserves.
The amount of cash at the Federal Reserve.
An infinite amount. Can we just hear that again? Because I love it.
There is an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve.
Exactly. And having an infinite amount, imagine an infinite amount of anything right now off the top of your head. Goats. Just think about any like problems. Like anything. Love, infinite amount of love. There's too much, like there probably could be too much love, but just anything you can think of, an infinite amount of it is going to be bad. But ultimately, fractional reserve lending, all the sorts of stuff, the inflation of printing money, that's what's going to be the problem, and is a problem, and people should be focusing on, not the idea that that Bitcoin fluctuates a bit, because other stuff fluctuates a bit. Like there's currencies that can drop 15-20% overnight because of a random event. So obviously they're very they're black swan events, but I thought when you were talking about bailouts, I was thinking, what would happen like if the US keeps on printing money and then eventually they need a bailout? Like, who are they going to go to? And I was thinking, right, it's going to be every iPhone user who Googles stuff and buys things from Amazon. They'll be like, we need your donations. We need your money now. Otherwise, we're not going to be trillion-dollar companies anymore. But inflation is bad. Like, just go and watch any documentary or like mini documentary on inflation. You're not going to find positive things. It's not like one where there's two sides of the fence, where you can argue, on both sides. Inflation is not good.
Can argue till the cows come home about how.
Yeah, but they don't make sense.
No, they don't. What I was just saying before, before it broke up, was that there's a whole lot of technicals happening. So you have what's called the repo market, which is basically the Fed buying stocks or borrowing, instantly giving cash and liquidity to the stock market when it's needed, and there's a whole bunch of really intricate intertwining mechanisms currently working in the modern economic system that you can't just lower interest rates or lift them. You can't just lift them. In fact, they have to go lower, because they've pumped the stock market so high that if they stop bringing this sort of liquidity into the markets, the stock market could see a massive crash, an absolutely distressed crash. And so what will happen actually is that we will go into negative interest rates. And when you see negative interest rates happening, you'll get more and more inflation, and it becomes a downward spiral because they have to chase their tail. And especially if you're on a first-term president, they want to keep their next term. So they're going to keep promises going, keep new schools, keep pumping new money, more money. It becomes this really like dog chasing its tail sort of thing. And I don't see with all these South American countries maybe heading in the same way as El Salvador, where they start to see there's other options than just the US dollar. That also dries up the use case of all this excess cash having places to go for all these countries that actually use the US dollar as a proxy. So I really feel that inflation is on its way, and it's heading quicker and quicker. And the hyperinflations that happen around the world, every single one of them happens after a stimulus. And that stimulus every single time comes after bad policy, a natural disaster, or corruption. So right now we've had a global natural disaster, or maybe it's an unnatural disaster. Maybe it was created, most likely. But whatever it is, it's a disaster, and they're stimulating their way out of it. So, and post-stimulation,
what happens post-simulation? You have a cigarette.
I think we might have lost Josh's connection there. As Jay-Z was saying, Dan, we had so many problems. And as Jay-Z once said, we have 99 problems, but Bitcoin ain't one. So, and you're asking how the government will be funded in the future. It says here that the government will be funded like Wikipedia. Every time there'll be a government action, it'll have a little banner across the top. Do you like what's going on here? Please donate to fund the US government. And again, this is a total mind shift for everyone involved. They would much prefer to say we need bombers, print the money for bombers, say we need disaster relief, print the money for disaster relief. Having to go out there and earn the money or actually have it before you spend it. It's a totally new concept.
There's real world examples such as, the Japanese government bonds for the widowmaker trade. So that for decades, traders have been trading against the Japanese government bonds, and that they'll default on their debts, and they'll have hyperinflation. All these terrible things will happen to their economy, and it just hasn't happened because they just take interest rates lower. They go below zero sometimes, and then they just create bigger deficits. This is the argument of all those MMTers. So, and in fact, it's where a lot of these MMTers made their money was on the other side of those trades. The problem, like Josh said, with these fiat currencies is when they do things like fiddle the books. So they pump the stock prices to make everything look economically fine. That's an issue. If you're printing money to create fiscal stimulation, which is then going to boost the economy, that's a good thing. And you can say that Keynesianism hasn't worked, but we could have had multiple Great Depressions since the last Great Depression, and we haven't, because governments have been in a position where if they have a stock market, a market crash, rather than sit back and say, sorry, peeps, we can't do anything, you have to let your children starve, they're able to create fiscal stimulus, they're able to do quantitative easing and all these other tools, usually badly, of course, because they're centralized decisions. But without that ability, those functions of soft currency, we could have spiraled into horrible Great Depressions and then probably more wars. Keynes' primary motivator was to prevent the outbreak of another war, because he'd been through 2 wars. He was the treasurer of the UK during the First World War, and wrote a book against the economic reparations against the Germans, in fact, and how it would cause the Second World War, which it then went on and did. So he would be happy to know that there's been lots of proxy wars, and those wars have been caused by largely US hegemony and people trying to keep their currencies as world reserve currencies, but generally there hasn't been another world war since the Great Wars, the Great Two Wars at the beginning of the 20th century. So there is a good argument that Keynesianism has, in fact, worked, but it needs to be done more effectively. What the post-Keynesians would maybe argue. But I think it's just unreasonable to expect that a government, when their country spirals out of control into a Great Depression, and a horrific stock market crash, to turn around to everybody and say, look, bear with us, because we'll have better, more efficient markets and tougher companies at the end of it. It's just not going to happen. Like, there'll be too much pressure on them to dig them out of that hole. And that's why, we're stuck with these things. Let's just make them better. Let's make these soft currencies better, these fiat currencies, and less corrupt resistant.
The thing has been, like, the Great Depression. Yeah, we haven't had other Great Depressions, but we will have the greatest depression by far. Like, they've done is kick the can down the road, and the snowball's gotten bigger, the can's gotten bigger, and when it does hit, it's going to really mess up things. Especially that Europe is printing, Australia is printing, Asia's printing. We're all trying to keep up with America. So the next Great Depression isn't just going to be America. It's going to be a global, massive destruction of.
Well, maybe not, and I hope you're wrong.
I hope I'm wrong too.
I see troughs and peaks, boom and bust, which is part of the capitalist mode of production. And you buffer those peaks and troughs by taking surplus value, which you generate during boom years, and then recycling it through recycling mechanisms like quantitative easing. So.
There's also been no Great Depression since Morrissey started writing songs. Just a fact.
That's true.
You guys want to predict the price? Yeah, it's the best part. Everyone's like, they're inflation.
When will you die? Do you remember that one about Margaret Thatcher? It's brilliant. It's just him going, when will you die? When will you die?
It's not a fan of Thatcher. This is also a good time for everyone to give us a thumbs up button. We have about 61 people watching now, and 28 people have liked us. So thank you so much for your support. You can also like later on it's still important to push that thumbs up button. But you're competing against the predictor of predictor, the prognosticator of prognosticators, the magic Bitcoin 8-ball. Dan Eve, will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week, inflation or not?
Okay, so just to go back on last week's prediction, because I didn't check on it. I think for the, oh no, I was wrong by about $100. Come on, that's pretty spot on. If I do like the 7-day, I'm about $100 off. Now, I said it would go up and it went down $100. So I'm going to say up. I think we've had the little mini extended dip, and it's going to go like going to hit all the prophecies as foretold in the plan B. Are going to go to the hundreds of Ks, and so next week is going to be up. But don't bet your house on it, and this is not financial advice.
I always end up buying the dip when I'm supposed to be hodling, or hodling when I'm supposed to be buying the dip. Ben Ark, the price of Bitcoin this time next week, higher or lower?
Higher. We're at the low. We're going higher. Where are we? 200. What are we aiming for? 240 grand. That's what we're aiming for, dollars. Or maybe they'll just inflate it and we'll get there anyway. And they'll inflate the dollar and we'll get to 240 grand.
If you say it 3 times, it must be true. And there's always been 2 ways to read that classic Bitcoin meme with Morpheus. By the time you're ready, you won't need to spend it. Because one of those is you could use Bitcoin. The other was what Ben's saying, where it's like, yeah, dollars really won't be worth anything. Everyone will be a millionaire, even garbage men. Josh Shigala, higher or lower?
The funny thing is here, Crypto Player in the chat says, too many negative news, I choose lower. Well, the thing is, I don't know where you're reading your news from, man. I'm seeing a lot of positive news. I really am. Like, I'm reading a lot of positive news everywhere. And this is the thing with echo chambers. If you're in certain regions of the internet, you might get one opinion that's like, and only negative stuff. If you're somewhere else, you see positive stuff. You're living in the same reality, but getting total different signals. I choose higher for next week.
But as Josh said, there's only one opinion that matters, the Bitcoin predictor ball. Here we are. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? Most likely from the ball. So there it is. Not financial advice. It's just a predictor ball.
Can we get someone in the chat to basically go back through the episodes and chart the Bitcoin procrastinators?
Oh, it's going to be heartbreaking. It's going to be like, if you had invested with the ball, you would have made 20,000% or something insane. So Go do the work. Moving on to issue 4. The Netherlands must ban Bitcoin, says Dutch bureaucrat. Yes, people are getting more and more excited about Bitcoin. Some people want to adopt it. Some people want to form their own mining council. Other people want to ban it completely. And why? Why does the head of the Netherlands Bureau for Economic Policy Analysis, Peter Hasekamp, why does he want to ban cryptocurrencies immediately, like right now? You would expect it to be the environmental argument, but instead he's going with the Ponzi scheme, saying that he believes a cryptocurrency crash is inevitable, so the Netherlands should act promptly to avoid any potential damage. For investors and governments alike, the last person to act is the loser. The Netherlands must now ban Bitcoin. Josh Shigala, is he correct? Should the Netherlands ban Bitcoin immediately? Not because of environmentalism or competition with central bank currencies, not because it takes away government's power to fiat and print money, but because a crash is inevitable, i.e. it's a Ponzi scheme.
First of all, you're reading the same news as Crypto Player, obviously, because this is pretty neg. It's pretty down on me. But what a kind of ridiculous thing is that? Because there will be a crash, it's inevitable. Of course it's inevitable. There's always booms and busts in this thing. It's in a price discovery phase. And it's got to find the right price. No one knows what this thing is worth yet. It'll go up or down. But the fact of the matter is, anybody that's held Bitcoin longer than, I think it's like probably, I don't know, 6 weeks. When was the longer than, if you bought it after Coinbase went public, then you're probably still in the red. But anyone else in the entire history, unless you sold at the weird times, if you just held, you're in the green by a lot.
Inevitable. I don't think you know what that word means. Dan Eve, is it inevitable? Is it crashing soon?
I'm gonna just switch things around, and I'm gonna say it's inevitable, because everyone always likes to say that Bitcoin is a bubble. No, I don't think it's crashing. Wait, are we on the Dutch article? Sorry, I got carried away writing messages.
Yeah, the Dutch say that it's going to crash and we should ban it immediately. It's the only safe thing we can do.
Oh yeah, well if Turkey and China say they're banning it, because the Dutch guy gave the examples. He was like, well, Turkey and China banned it. Well, what? But definitely, let's just ban it. What was cool was that a ban failed in 2018, so someone actually did propose it, and it was rallied against. I'd like to think that Bitcoin has a stronger position now than it did in 2018. Because 2018 was on the come down of the near 20K peak in 2017. There was probably a lot of FUD about it then. Let's face it, the infrastructure wasn't anywhere near as integrated and widespread as it is now. You didn't have Lightning. So, countering that part of the environmentalist argument. So I'd say that the case is much better for Bitcoin now than it was in 2018. And it always gets better, because when there's a bear market, people keep building. That's the good thing, is that people have faith, like George Michael, and they gotta have faith. So they keep a building, ka-ding, keep it building, ka-ding. Lightning is one of the things that came up. So as long as people continue building, I think that Bitcoin's got a much stronger case to stay around, especially with El Salvador, although not especially with El Salvador, now that you've read the Wikipedia to me, because I thought it was all positive, and I read that and I was like, I was literally face planting. You're like, oh no, he did what? A coup? Oh, a coup. But no, I think at the end of the day, fraud, criminal usages, and financial instability is rife in every other country, in terms of, inflation is financial instability, but a longer scale. And that's why, I think maybe Bitcoin's a lot more popular with young'uns, is that they don't really appreciate how bad the financial crisis in 2007 was, in 2007, 2008. So other people that have been through, things longer, they kind of think, oh, the banks are resilient, but no, they're not. They need bailouts. They need money, funding, and that's from your pockets. Like, it doesn't come from out of thin air. Well, it kind of does. It gets printed. There's an infinite amount of money, as we've seen. But I think also it says that additionally, due to the decentralized nature, they're traded internationally, with authorities having little control over. Whenever they're saying it from the government's perspective, it's like there's no control, and everyone else is like, there's no control over Bitcoin. It's two different, completely different sides of the spectrum. You don't want to have one party or a collection of parties to have control over Bitcoin. That's the point of it. You need it to be decided by the masses, and that's the joy of Bitcoin. So whilst Bank of England Governor Bailey says that it's dangerous and it's got no intrinsic value, everyone just needs to DYOR, which is do your own research. And I think that if you look at sources and a varied variety of sources, you'll see that often it's very politicized. It's kind of like, people who are against Bitcoin from the environmental perspective will often, there's synergies, as it were, between who's against Bitcoin and who isn't. But imagine if the US banned the internet, for example. Like, they were like, oh, we're going to ban the internet. Like, Silicon Valley would be just in another country. It wouldn't have stopped. There wouldn't be a no Silicon Valley. It would be called a different Silicon Valley, and all the $1 trillion companies that came out of it would be in another country. So you're just losing out.
Silicon Bengali.
Silicon Bengali, exactly. Is that what you said? My headphones are on low. So I think go along Switzerland's route, which is rock Bitcoin, put the infrastructure in. Actually, their take is that if you get licensed and help us fight crime, boom, you're in. That's it. Foot in the door. We'll even help you get visas and stuff. Slightly more legitimately than El Salvador. I'm not saying it's not legitimate, but just read the Wikipedia. And anyway, I'm going to shut up. But ultimately, I think that don't ban Bitcoin because it's a stupid idea.
Well, it's always more fun when they ban Bitcoin than when they accept it. And it often happens just a few weeks apart. Ben Ark, your thoughts on Netherlands wanting to ban Bitcoin entirely?
Yeah, I just imagine the meeting where they're like, what is this Bitcoin? Can we ban it? Okay, yeah, we ban it, but let's ban the Bitcoin. It's good because it means it's a threat. They're having these meetings about this goofy software, which we've been playing around with for years, because they're worried about it, because they understand it could dent some of their power and grip over their populations, because it gives them an off-ramp. So if you're not happy with your fiat currency, you can off-ramp. And that they're worried about it, they're concerned about it. I mean, if they think it's going to crash, and that's what they're worried about, then it's fairly obvious. I mean, if that were a plausible thing to happen, then it's going to take a while for it to happen. Maybe a bunch of South American countries or Central American countries adopt Bitcoin. The experiment ends horribly. Some major critical flaw in software we didn't predict because we weren't using it on scale, and then Bitcoin plummets to zero. That's a ways away. So Netherlands are it's a very preemptive step. No, I think it's good because it means to them it's a threat. It's not because it's if they actually really think that it's gonna crash or it's gonna have any serious problems. But yeah, it's who knows? It's a silly stance. Maybe they just did it for some politicking reason. They wanted to impress some old fuddy-duddies in the corridors of power. So they said something stupid. Often happens.
One thing I love is when, instead of just going out for a blatant ban, some countries just put massive taxes on it. And the headline's like, this could hurt our citizens if you bought this. So instead, we're going to put you in prison if you don't pay your taxes on it, and just kidnap you. It's just, the logic makes no sense.
It's very strange. They're they're quite a freedom-loving people in the Netherlands. I'm just surprised they came out of the Netherlands, really.
Meanwhile, as Josh was saying, in the United States, the FBI is running an underground communication device for criminals, allowing them to communicate and then later entrapping them, just as the FBI ran the Silk Road for a little bit, allowing people to use it, then entrapping them. Yet it's so bad to run these things, yet the FBI does it. So confusing.
When you think about it, they say, oh yeah, Visa's more efficient. It may be by your calculations, for example, probably is. I'm not going to lie at this stage anyway. But you don't turn around and go, well, no one should drive a Range Rover. We're banning Range Rovers, and everyone should drive an electric moped because that's all you need, and you shouldn't have anything else. It's crazy.
Yeah, they always miss this social scale a bit. They look at just a Bitcoin on-chain transaction, sending one value from one person to another, and they just completely exclude because it destroys the argument, all the social scalability stuff, which we've all known about and just been trying to build out for years, which is what you get with the Lightning Network, but then all the additional data we can pack into a transaction as well. So, and then I mean, I know we're not a story of a week or whatever, but we've been experimenting with payment splitting in LM Bits recently, and you just realize that using Lightning Network and using micropayments, you can do away with a lot of the legacy money management bollocks you usually have to deal with, and make production more efficient. Just producing stuff, and that's a huge efficiency saver, and reduces carbon footprints and things. So it's a daft stance.
Exit question, yes or no? Forced prediction. Will the Netherlands join Turkey, China, and Iran in banning Bitcoin? Ben Ark, yes or no?
Yes. No. Yes. No.
Oh, the answer is no. Josh Shigala, will the Netherlands ban Bitcoin? Yes or no?
There's no way. There's no way they're banned. You know how many like startups are over there in Bitcoin? They'll just have this massive brain drain, and they go, "Oh, whoops! Can we undo that? That was a bit silly."
Dan Eve, yes or no?
I'm going to say no, and that's because Martin will put in a good word for us. He'd be like, "Why would you do that? Why not ban it?"
It's like he's in the room.
Now we just need to bring up the GIF on Ben's screen. We'd be all set. All right. I think that's about it. We've finished all the issues. We're going to move on to predictions or a story of the week. Dan Eve, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
My story of the week. This is going to be one from the heart. After I said that you know infinite love would be bad, you know I'm going to retract on that. And my son, who's been really ill, was nearly 2 years old. Just this is for anyone else who's worried. Had a temperature of like 39.8, which is hotter than the sun. It was insane. It's like had it for a week. But he's finally a lot better. So my story of the week is that, my son, who was very ill, is now doing really good. And have faith, because it may seem that, doctors and stuff fob you off, but eventually, people recover. But make sure that, you nudge him and be like, hey, man, don't fob me off.
Well, all you need is love, and love is all you need.
Not infinite amounts.
Infinite amounts of anything kind of questions the reality of physics, but that's a different issue. Ben Ark, not talking about black holes here, but do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Perhaps a escape horizon?
I can't really follow that, can I? I'm glad to hear that, Dan. I didn't know the poor little fellow was feeling under the weather there. It's quite terrifying, particularly with the little ones when they get these high temperatures for long extended periods, because they go floppy and you're freaking out the whole time. So I'm glad he's coming out the other side of that. Not really. I mean, I mentioned the payment splitting thing. So we've got a new extension on Bits where you can split payments. It's pretty cool. Kind of gets me excited. Just about, people, to have, so say, a salesperson receiving their commission at the point of sale of an item. So they just instantly, their wallet gets funded, or have, if you've got value inputs going into a company, have it go to all the outputs instantly. So it's different departments and then different people working in those departments. Could also be obviously, I like the idea of co-ops and joint ventures. So it can be used in that context to, capture value as opposed to letting that surplus value be managed by people who then inevitably gear the thing to be in their interests, get rid of the middle managers. So there's that. That's pretty much it. I'm working on some other stuff. I've got a new extension which I'm going to put out for Bits, but I've got to do some debugging, so I'll probably put it out this weekend. It's pretty cool. You can connect your Spotify account to Bits on a device, and then through its API, and then you can plug it into your bar, have a little GUI which people go to, and they can just pay for songs. And it works well. So I've been playing with that today. So I still got to sort of,
that's amazing. Sorry, can you use that? That's amazing.
So and also tell them what you did at Bitcoin 2021. You did the arcade machines.
Oh, that was such a stressful experience.
Last time you had to hack it. This time you were able to use LN Bits. How did that go?
Yeah, no, it's really there's a lot of serendipity there. So I wasn't able to go because we can't travel to the US. But Christian Rutzer was there, so I sent a bunch of these like hardware, and he was going to fit them to the arcade machines. So Bitcoin Magazine, they paid for a bunch of these arcade machines, and they're going to be retrofitted with the hardware. Quite annoyingly, the hardware got lost by the organizers. I think they were really busy. So there was a bit of, it took a while to kind of get these things retrofitted. And Christian Rutzer was really busy running the Hack Dome. So, we early on, we asked the conference if they could have a hack space for developers for free and open source projects where they could meet and then shill their stuff. And they erected this huge, massive, incredible dome tent. And because I wasn't there, then it kind of fell on Christian's shoulders to run it. And he did. He's amazing, man. Like, he did such a great job. And I'm super grateful. And I feel really guilty, actually, because I mean, he couldn't really do anything else in the conference, but you know, it's a very important space. So I'm glad he did that. Anyway, the person who ended up fitting these arcade machines with these hardware devices, interestingly, was George Vasaro, who at the Lightning Hack Day in New York in like 2018, we hooked up together because I was really trying to figure out how to do like have a static QR code which you send sats to on Lightning Network as opposed to having to generate invoices. And he figured out a way of
if you needed to put another quarter in, you could send it to the same address.
Yeah, you just pay the same address.
Like Centipede, send it again. Yeah.
And he had like this arcade machine which he brought with him, and he was able to hack the Eclair wallet. So we do a GET request. So the QR code is basically just a URL, and the wallet scans it. And then when it scans it, it just receives an invoice, and then the wallet just pays the invoice. You know, you say yes, pay the invoice. That's the first version of LNURL. I'm, later on, after many months, that eventually ended up by Virjaf and Anton over at BLW Wallet. That ended up, well, not that specifically. I don't know how much influence was there, but much later on, a different group team worked on the same idea and developed LNURL Pay, LNURL Withdraw. What's cool is these new arcade machines, which I retrofitted, they were using the LNURL Pay. So they had this static QR code and people paid it, and then it was like putting a credit into the arcade machine. So George Vasaro did the first ever, static QR code transaction on an arcade machine in the Lightning Hack Day. And then just randomly, because he's the only person I could find at the conference who knew how to do the hardware stuff, and he was the one who was then retrofitting this technology, which had evolved over a few years to become an actual functional technology, into these new arcade machines. So it was just so serendipitous. I was dorking out over it. And again, super grateful for that dude for hooking it up and then demoing it to a whole bunch of people. It was great. So yeah, thanks, George.
That sounds great. Thanks again to the Bitcoin 2021 conference, to Christian Rutzel and to George for hooking it up and getting those machines to accept Lightning. I'm sure it was really neat for everyone to pay in Satoshis and then to play a video game. Just sounds great.
Yeah, it's great.
All right, Josh Shigala, a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
Well, first I've got to say, Dan, I'm really happy to hear that your little fella's coming out the other side, man. It is, like Ben said, it's scary. They're so fragile and small. I just think, come on, you can do it. Well, the big news for us is we launched the standard. The standard is hoping to be, we don't need to wait for government to create a gold standard type of thing. We just create our own. And I've been for years trying to figure out how to tokenize gold. Everyone's like, tokenize gold. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work. You can't tokenize this gold because there's costs of holding the gold. Any gold coin out there that just says 1-to-1 ERC20 is 1 gram of gold is a scam, because they're not paying for the demurrage, the men or the women with guns at the front, the big doors, the insurance, the auditing, all that needs to be paid. And if you lose your private keys, that company is paying for that gold forever. So they need new people to come in to pay for the people that have lost their private keys. It becomes a Ponzi, it becomes a downward spiral. It's silly. How many grams of gold does it cost for a bottle of vodka? No one knows. Everyone deals in their local currency. So we built the standard, which is similar to the MakerDAO, where people lock up physical assets as well as digital assets like wrapped Bitcoin or Ethereum, and then generate standard euros. So this will be a euro stablecoin backed by gold. And so inflation works for you. As inflation comes in, it doesn't matter, because you took out a loan from yourself and you pay that back, and in 10 years time, and you've still got your gold and you've still got your Bitcoin, and you've been able to pay back a loan with fiat, which has been inflated away. So yay for inflation if you're doing that. So that's the big thing. It's called The Standard. It's on thestandard.io. So it's a bit of a passion project of mine. We've got some really top people working on it, some OGs in the crypto space who enjoy the idea. And I'm really excited to sort of tie in the physical side, the physical metals, and not just have the this whole hatred towards the gold hating on the crypto and the crypto hating the gold. I think they work really, really well together. And there's $12.5 trillion sitting in gold in vaulting facilities, just gathering dust. So it'd be really nice to see people being able to actually generate euros from them. And later on, we're going to allow other stable coins to be generated as well, which will be like Ghana's currency and the dollar maybe, but there's so many stable coins that are already the dollar. But the biggest issue I see with stable coins right now is that negative interest rate will come, and that will destroy all these stable coins that are just purely one-to-one backing. Because if you hold this is why there's no real euro stable coins around. It's because if someone has $1 billion worth of euros sitting at a bank, they have to pay a negative interest rate on that. That's going to basically bankrupt them. So I think algorithmic stable coins are the future. I think they're really, really exciting. I also love the idea of the decentral banking mechanisms of the community, the DAO deciding on interest rates. And one thing we're doing is trying to get around voter apathy, because MakerDAO has a lot of voter apathy by using prediction markets instead of voting. And prediction markets allow, so instead of, you try to say in a week's time, will this interest rate peg us closer to the euro peg or not? And these sort of mechanisms are really interesting. I know this isn't a Bitcoin thing, but I wish Bitcoin, Bitcoin, everyone said it's a store of value. It's not something you program that well, apart from on Lightning. But even on Lightning, it's not that programmable. RGB is working on it. But Bitcoin is that store of value thing. So to try to do something like this on Bitcoin just isn't possible, unfortunately. But I'm really interested in where this will go. I'm super excited by the team. The first partner is Voltoro, and all the customers will be able to basically lock up their gold as well as crypto assets into a smart vault and exit that. And if you go to the standard.io, you can check out the videos there and see what's happening and sign up to Voltoro. That's where the pre-market distribution, if you're one of these people that really love to get in super early in these things, that's where that'll be.
Yeah, well done.
Pre-sale. Oh yeah.
I'm super excited about it. I think it's great. I think it's really interesting. Yeah. I love the idea of baskets of assets back in these stable coins. And then, like we were talking before about hard currencies and soft currencies, and one of the flaws of a hard currency is you do that, you vault it, and then there's no economic, lubrication. There's no what's the word they use? Throughput. No, not throughput. Oh, bloody hell, velocity. Velocity. To create economic movement. So this kind of solves that if it can be done. I know you're using your Glassbox protocol, and I hope it gets like traction, and I hope I'm looking forward to seeing some of the experimentation done with it. I know you're like you're massively into doing like economic tricks to be able to increase your stacks with your Bitcoin, and I'm always scared to do things like that. So I'm always very impressed when I hear that you've bought this or that using a Bitcoin in some very clever way. So I only expect that this is going to be as clever. Super excited about it.
Thanks very much, Ben. Yeah. I'm really excited about it, because one of the things that has really troubled me for a long time is you just can't tokenize gold that easy. And anything, like all these projects, like I'm going to tokenize real estate, or I'm going to tokenize all these things. These have real world costs. And if people lose their private keys, those real world costs don't get paid, because usually the mechanism is they say, as soon as you send it, part of the transaction fee splits off and pays for the external thing or whatever. But then if you lose your private keys, or if there's low velocity, that doesn't happen. So it just breaks that whole model. But this whole locking up, we do tokenize the gold, but it never leaves the smart contract. It just gets burnt out of the smart contract. So it's more of a unit of account to to peg it to the voting facilities database of how much you've got. So you're not allowed to sell the physical if you're a client of someone that's plugged into this protocol. So there's some really interesting stuff. You can check out the white paper. I really love anyone's feedback on it who's into this sort of thing. Like we spent a long time writing the technicals on and the specs, how this would work, and so there's a lot of really nice academic work as well that's gone into this. So
how do you secure the basket of assets then? Like a dumb question, like how does the gold, because obviously gold's physical, but then if you use Bitcoin as well, how's that all secured in your vault?
Yeah, so right now with Vaultoro, it's basically secured in Brinks in Switzerland at the airport there, and it's old school, audited, insured, and big massive doors. Basically,
so the standard's the same. The standard's the same model.
No, so what the standard allows is voting facilities like Vaultoro to plug itself in to this protocol, and so anyone that's a customer of Vaultoro can then say, okay, plug it in, and those assets that are held there, the community has to, when onboarding a hard asset custodian like Vaultoro, the community, the DAO, like the Decentralized Autonomous Organization, will vote on a new facility that's coming in. They have to pass certain things, like they have to be transparent with the Glassbooks protocol. They have to have a solid API, but they also have to be fully insured and audited by top tier insurers and auditors. So the DAO can also kick out hard assets custodians if they're not up to par with their due diligence. So it's all about the old school world. You know, we've had 3,000 years of scams in gold. So Bitcoin has had 12 years of scams in Bitcoin. So that 3,000 years or more has the gold industry has really learned on how to deal with that. So it's if there's one thing that humans do well is lock up physical things in vaults. They're pretty good at it by now.
With guns.
We can't say the same about Bitcoin yet. We still don't know how to properly secure it. People are still getting hacked and stuff. There are certain companies that do it well. But it's very, very tricky. So it's something that humans are still learning how to do is secure digital assets. But yeah, the physical assets are pretty easy to secure, and it's all about accounting and locking up the server side stuff. And the good thing is, the more we decentralize the system by allowing different hard asset custodians to plug into it, the more decentralized it becomes. So what we're trying to build is a protocol that will plug into independent voting facilities around the world, and which Vaultoro is the first one. Yeah.
Nice, that's cool. What if it goes the other way? What if the inflation goes the other way? I know it's a bit of a silly question, but
no, I mean
that would be the immediate concern.
Yeah, inflation goes the other way, then yeah, it's going to cost more to pay back your loan. I mean, if you're essentially borrowing money from yourself, so or going long on the assets that you have. So you want to, you want to check what is happening in your neck of the woods politically, and make sure you do things appropriately. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds great, Josh, and people can check it out at thestandard.io. And we hope to hear more about it in the future as you guys get going.
Thanks, man.
I'd just like to ask everyone to check out World Crypto Network, either at worldcryptonetwork.com or on YouTube. You could subscribe, give us thumbs up. You could hit that notifications bell. We've got some new interviews this week, mainly about NFTs. A lot of them tell the history of a 27 NFT that I worked on called Curio Cards that was recently rediscovered, but I'm afraid not widely discovered yet. So it's been fun. We've been chatting about NFTs, and of course we got the Bitcoin group and other shows for you right here on the World Crypto Network. So be sure to subscribe down below, give us a thumbs up and that kind of thing. Thanks so much for watching. Until next week, bye.
Bye.